This is an analysis of 701 Russell Avenue in Gaithersburg, Maryland. This is for MPRE 631, Foundations of Real Estate Markets, taught by Dr. Dean Bellis at Georgetown University. My name is Justin Penza, and I wanted to thank you for taking a few minutes to listen to my presentation. 701 Russell Avenue is an 85-acre commercial site with primary access directly off of Montgomery Village Avenue, shown on this map as State Road 124, and North Frederick Avenue, shown on this map as State Road 355. To give you a better understanding of the relationship between Interstate 270 and the site that we're discussing, we pulled our elevation just a little bit higher in Google Earth to give you a sense of how close State Road 355 is to Interstate 270. So you can see Interstate 270 is running right here, and it's less than a mile from the site. It makes perfect sense that in the mid-70s, when this was conceptualized and then ultimately delivered in 1978, this was a perfect location and a very well contemplated selection for a major mall and shopping center. We've decreased our elevation in Google Earth so we can discuss topography at greater detail. As you can see from the site, it's completely flat. There really isn't any topographical changes that you have to negotiate. There are no hills, there are no changes in elevation, which is a huge advantage when you're looking at raising a site. What you will see off to the west are 3 water retention ponds. They'll serve as a barrier that will distance the site from the major intersection of the 124 and the 355. That can be considered a positive attribute for office and residential real estate assets, but may prove problematic to retail development based on impaired visibility. What is a huge advantage to the site from a construction standpoint are these series of 6 entry points to the site. Makes it very, very easy for a general contractor to get trucks both in and out of the site, and to have effective equipment and material staging areas so that whatever you need to build on the site, you're going to have the space to put everything down you need to put down, and you're going to have the ability to have trucks come in one way and out the other. As I reviewed the CoStar office report, I decided to exclude a handful of properties that I felt were outside of the primary trade area for our study. Ultimately, we used 107 of the 111 properties examined in the CoStar report. For the areas that I've included, the total amount of space is just under 15 million square feet. Total available space is just over 3 million square feet. Vacancy rate for office space is just about 20.5%. And then the absorption rate, I buttressed this data with a study from Jones Lang LaSalle from 2015, which shows kind of a hit and miss for Montgomery County office space net absorption from 2010 to 2015, with a significant downward trend moving into the middle of the decade. You can see that average yearly absorption is 84,340 square feet. Now, that translates into 36 years of supply, and if you count pending deliveries not pre-leased, it turns into 44 years. In the midst of Montgomery County's office problem, Gaithersburg's office problem is over twice as challenging. 38 of the 59 properties are over 20 years old. Only 4 of those 38 have been renovated since 2000. 11 of those properties are over 70% vacant, and 6 of the 11 completely empty. Gaithersburg has an office vacancy of 48%. Their average rents are 10% lower than the CoStar market area, and the potential renovation for existing properties are low due to the lack of proximity to additional amenities. These were your standard office parks that were built without much thought to access to other areas of either food or transport or anything like that. It was simply just a place where you drove and you went to work, and when you were done, you went home. For our residential market analysis, we were given site-wise data provided through Georgetown through our course materials. Most of the questions this week involved us manipulating that data and this is one of the most important pieces of data we had to aggregate, which was total population over the census and estimates and projections for both population growth and household. There were many questions to answer for the assignment. I'm only going to focus on a handful of them because really the point of the residential market analysis was to push me personally into some additional research avenues that helped me reach my conclusion for this report. An example of a few of the questions that we were asked were median age at 35.83 years. We wanted to know if there was a concentration of a demographic based on population. I found that 46% of the population was 25 to 54 years old. Unemployment rate was at 5.19. But ultimately, this prompted a deeper research. It got me looking at the schools around 701 Russell, which are very much struggling. And it got me into ethnic demographic studies beyond the site-wise data. Pushed me into Census Bureau and American Fact Finder. I'd like to focus on a couple more data points on the supply side of our residential market analysis before I get into a more deeper demographic study of the demand side and a greater and deeper discussion of our immediate population around 701 Russell Avenue. First off, I wanted to discuss average rental rates that we gleaned from competition properties to potential residential around 701 Russell Avenue, calling special attention to the two-bedroom price, which is $1.51 per square foot in these competition properties. Vacancy rates for housing units by unit type. Once again, we're focusing on apartments for purposes of this conversation. In 2015, that's 4.3%, which is essentially full occupancy. This is the part of the exercise that I really started feeling like an analyst, or the beginning of an analyst. I had uncovered some information that made me want to drill a little deeper, and we had been given some hints by our data packet from Georgetown and from Dr. Bellis about where we should be looking a little more carefully to understand demographic data. What you're looking at here is from the United States Census Bureau, factfinder.census.gov. This is an incredibly powerful search engine that gives you access to essentially all of the United States Census information that's been performed up to this point. It's not the easiest database to utilize, which is why there's a cottage industry of companies that aggregate this data and make it more accessible and more meaningful and usable. But it is a good place to start, and I feel almost like there should be a module in this Georgetown program just for how to use this the Census Bureau and the different data that's available to you in it. What you're looking at here are a series of block group census tracts that have Hispanic or Latinos living in the household. I wanted to draw your attention down to block group 2, census tract 7007, value 232. That's pointing directly at 701 Russell Avenue, and then the rest of the block group census tracts are these areas around our site property. This shows that we've got a larger percentage than normal living in this area with Latino households. It's not the most user-friendly graphic, which is why I went to some other sections, which I'll get into here in just a second. These next two graphs grant better context and a deeper understanding of the block group census tract graphic that I showed you in the immediately previous slide. This first graph shows races by household in zip code 20877. The block groups that I showed you in the earlier slide roughly encompass zip code 20877 in Maryland. It's not an exact match, but it's very, very close. What jumps right out at you is that Hispanic and Latino at 37.5% is the predominant group in that area. But that doesn't tell us enough. We need to know what part of Latin America or what part of Europe even that they've come from. And that's when I took a look at the most common places of birth for foreign-born residents in that zip code. And you can see that Costa Rica, Guatemala, and El Salvador make up about 45% of foreign-born residents, and you can see that they are far outpacing what is the average for foreign-born residents that are residents of Maryland. So we have this deeply, deeply local group and this tightly connected group of Costa Ricans, Guatemalans, and El Salvadorians that live in this zip code, that live right around this area. As we'll see in the retail market analysis, they're essentially being completely ignored. As we start our section on retail market analysis, this module during the class was one of the starkest lessons I've ever learned about data sets and how carefully you have to look at numbers to understand what you're being told, what you're not being told, and how much you can trust the information that's in front of you. One of the first things that we looked at in this Lake Forest Mall primary trade area was consumer buying power. First thing that they give you, top line, is this $1.985 billion number, which is the total specified consumer expenditures. What they give you, though, is a total of $807 million of individual line items that encompass what you're actually supposed to use to calculate your capture rates. So it was very easy to fall into the trap of taking all of these individual line items, food at home, alcoholic beverages at home, and using those numbers and dividing them into that $1.9 billion number. But at the end of the day, even though they were giving you those specified consumer expenditures, what they were giving you for line items was much, much less. And that deeply affected all of the calculations throughout this portion of the exercise. As I performed my virtual driving tour of each of the CoStar primary trade area shopping centers and anchor stores, it became very clear that the retailers had made a conscious decision to focus on the wealthiest demographic, which makes perfect sense, which was the Asian population. What's interesting about the way that this Asian population is treated is that they are treated as individual groups. You know, there are places to buy Vietnamese food, there are places to buy Japanese food, there are places to buy Cantonese food, Mandarin food, Sichuan food, Thai food, Malaysian food. They're treated as these individual groups because they have the purchasing power to be treated as an individual group. My demographic that I focused on, Hispanic or Latino, has the lowest purchasing power of any identified ethnic group. And as you tour these CoStar primary trade area locations, you can see virtually no representation or no access to ethnic foods for Hispanic or Latino races, and certainly no differentiation among different Central American or European countries. To complete our retail market trade analysis, we needed to compare the total amount of supportable retail space for each of the retail categories we were given in 2015 against the total amount supportable in 2020. It turns out if you add up all of the line items that we were given, there is an additional 14,712 square feet of retail space supportable in this PTA. There's roughly, based on my calculations and based on some of the corrections I made to the CoStar report, about 5.7 million square feet of retail space, which leads me to believe that these shopping centers are pulling from much, much larger demographic areas and not just the area that they gave us in the map. One of the problems with the CoStar report, and I'll just highlight two items. Number one, they had a 460,000 square foot target. Targets average, 55,000 to 75,000 square feet. A super target might get as big as 120,000 square feet, but never larger than that. So the CoStar data was suspect. It became even more suspect to me when I found a 1.4 million square foot facility that turned out to be a Department of Energy agency instead of a retail space. So it was a good lesson in really taking a look at each of the pieces of data you're given and doing these virtual tours to ensure that what you're handed is what is really what you're supposed to be evaluating. As I performed due diligence on the site, this became a sociological study every bit as much as the traditional real estate market analysis. My recommendations for development at 701 Russell Avenue focus on this underserved Latino Hispanic community located immediately around the site. Market-appropriate uses for the site will involve subsidized low-income housing that will center around large family units living in dormitory-style settings. The site should also house a community center for English as a second language training and vocational training as a public-private investment among the developer, the City of Gaithersburg, Montgomery County, and the State of Maryland. There are multiple avenues to achieve assistance with the development at the city, county, and state level. The City of Gaithersburg's Economic Incentive Program provides grants for tenant fit-up, vocational training, demolition assistance, and utility upgrades, all of which will be advantageous to a developer. Montgomery County also offers a new jobs tax credit that combines state and county tax credits to businesses that hire 25 or more permanent full-time employees and occupy 5,000 square feet of new and previously unoccupied space. 1- and 2-bedroom apartments will also be a portion of the residential asset mix as aspirational couples and young families move beyond the subsidized housing and into the larger community. In addition to the subsidized housing for the new residents, a small amount of Central American ethnocentric neighborhood goods and services and food and beverage retail must be part of the asset mix to accommodate these residents as they move in. A carniceria, which is a butcher that usually sells a limited grocery amount and has a quasi-deli food counter for plated meals, a panaderia for breads and groceries, a lavanderia for laundromats, because we will not have central laundry in the buildings, and a Latino-based supermarket such as a Vallarta for comprehensive grocery needs. Just as the Asian population in the Gaithersburg area has H Mart, this group will have Vallarta for all of the different ethnic groups that are represented in the area. Finally, they'll need a Western Union. Many of these families are sending money home to relatives still in other countries of origin. We need to make that easy for them to do so that they don't have to travel to do it. Done correctly, this can truly be a creation of place strategy to address an underprivileged community and elevate their American experience. Traditional real estate product will roughly meet demand by 2020 in this primary trade area. The shared living space proposed by this report will exist as a completely new asset. Taking only the 20877 zip code into consideration, we anticipate a capture rate of 15% of Hispanic Latino households. That results in 511 households taking possession of a dormitory unit. Based on the ability to consolidate, we anticipate that households taking possession of the dormitory units will reduce by 35% to 332 total households. Each dormitory should have 4 160 square foot bedrooms, large enough for 2 individuals in a dormitory setting. Full kitchen, bathroom facilities, and a common area will add an additional square footage of up to 990 square feet total to house 8 individuals. Ultimately, our asset mix is 332 dormitory units, 25 one-bedroom units, and 50 two-bedroom units as aspirational couples graduate out of the dorms. Pricing, we should be in line with the demographics' diminished earning power, with prices charged to the renter at 71.4% of current residential two-bedroom apartment pricing at $1.51. Comes out to $1.08 per square foot, with the balance subsidized by the county. Current annual income of the Hispanic Latino households will qualify nearly every household for housing assistance. Once again, thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I had an incredible experience doing this research, and it took me to places and helped me understand a community in a way that I had never experienced before, and I'm deeply grateful for the assignments and for the class. Once again, my name's Justin Penza. If you want to discuss the project, you're more than welcome to reach out and call me at this number below, or you can reach out to me at jmp376@georgetown.edu. Thank you again.